So yeah, so welcome to church,
Thank you.
where we sort of talk about metal and mental health things, but sometimes metal adjacent things. And today, I suppose, will be that because we'll talk about tattoos.
Cool.
So I'm really pleased to have you here, Dr. Mark Pearson, a scholar. Um, do you want to tell me a little bit about like who you are and kind of your work on tattoos and anything else that might be relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So started working in the field of mental health probably about nearly 20 years ago. Initially qualified as a mental health nurse, worked in practice for about just under 10 years before moving into academia. Um, uh, and within academia, various sort of teaching and research, but a lot of my research focuses more on um, sort of health humanities and creative practice in that area. So I did quite a bit of work around kind of poetry and creative writing, and then more recently, I've got interested in tattoos and tattooing and the relationship between tattooing and mental health. And I guess it all comes back to sort of stories, really, that I'm interested in different creative ways of expressing stories and kind of how tattoos feature within that. Um, and so I've done, yeah, various pieces of work on this, looking at individuals and their tattoos, looking at the role of tattoo artists, and I've currently got various pieces of work in the pipeline to continue that going forward. It seems like something that is quite under researched and there's a need for more knowledge in the area.
Yeah. Why do you think that it's not very well researched? Because I mean, like, loads of people have tattoos now, don't they? It's much more, maybe much more common than it used to be.
Yeah, I I think that there's certainly historically a lot of the work that was done with tattoos was or seems to have been done through a very particular lens, which is often one of tattoos as indicators of risk or
Deviance.
deviancy, if
Yeah.
that's not too strong a word. Um, like there are papers that I've seen that will talk about, if a person has, X or more tattoos, they're more likely to have everything from poor dental hygiene to, poor mental health and everything kind of in between. And so it's very much focused kind of in that sort of route. And it's only really, I would say, in the last few years that more research has emerged that's delved a bit deeper and started to actually engage with people that have tattoos meaningfully to try and um, understand really what that's about. And I suppose in many ways that's the trajectory that a lot of research in mental health has gone from, a place of there's this group of people over here that we're going to research about and label as opposed to we're actually going to go in and find out what's going on here. And I think tattoos are just the one of the later areas of research that's kind of reached that point in its research trajectory where the sort of meaningful research is starting to happen now.
Yeah. It reminds me of the stuff we talk about heavy metal actually, because that started off as like a group of like deviant people and like people that listen to this sort of music and the possible like well-being benefits that seems to be something that was kind of researched like later on. Starts off from a place of like why this is bad and then moves into a place of like why it might be good. I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you get all of that kind of cultural sort of baggage that comes on top of research and often, you know, has that kind of potential orientating factor to it where it sort of shapes the way that people think about a thing, whether it's heavy metal or tattooing or whatever. And those sort of meta narratives are so powerful in orientating the way that people think about certain concepts. So with some of my other work around poetry and creative writing, I'm always really interested in the remaining baggage that has with that. It's much easier to get people to come to for like a writing workshop or a creative writing workshop than it is to a poetry workshop. As soon as you call it poetry, people are like, well, that's something that the upper classes do when they're laying in hammocks and eating soft cheeses, and it's not what real people do. And it's still hard to break down those broader
Yeah.
narratives that exist.
Yeah, I come across this idea quite a lot about, like high art and low art,
Right, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and like metal's low art. So
Yeah.
there's almost this like sometimes a kind of like a bit of a stigma around it, and I wonder if tattooing kind of feels a bit like that as well, maybe
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah, I think maybe so. Um uh I think certainly as you say, that kind of and almost a sense because it is a like call it like let's say low art, then it's easy to dismiss the kind of knowledge there, isn't it? It's easy to go, well, there's nothing that we need to learn from this group of people over here because it's low art and we can
Mm.
kind of focus over here. And so all this knowledge gets missed and never appreciated by people that might benefit from it, but also wider society in terms of changing some of those ideas and stories that exist.
Yes, yeah. And do you kind of come to this research as like a tattooed person? Because I suppose I've thought a little bit about, you know, health professionals who have tattoos and like what that says, whether there's still some stigma about that, you know. Did it like was there like a personal narrative as well that kind of contributed to your interest?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, I've got quite a lot of tattoos, and I think it's unusual, or certainly in my experience, if you spend a prolonged period of time sat in a tattoo artist's chair, that you leave and think, oh, we didn't talk about mental health at all during that time. Um, and often because of the things that you're drawn in there for. So, my first tattoo, which um, I really don't like anymore, but
Often the way.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But so the first tattoo that I got was when I was about 20, and I lost a friend in a car accident, and I went and got this tattoo as part of, I guess, the sort of process of making meaning from that and trying to understand it and understand um, how this kind of loss was affecting me, and uh, now when I look at the tattoo, not only do I not like it, but I often think that if he was still here, he would look at that and go, what the hell is that? Like, I don't like that, and that does not reflect me at all.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't cover it up. Because
Yeah.
it feels too kind of connected to me. So, but I can remember going in and saying to the bloke, yeah, this is what I want, and him kind of doing it, and just naturally the conversation. Oh, so why do you want this then? Well, this is why. You know, More recently that I've been to, I think I'm probably the same for a lot of people. You end up going back to the same artist,
Yeah.
a lot, and the person that's done a lot of my tattoos, you know, knows all sorts of things about me that we've shared and discussed, and one of my tattoos is that there's a uh, campaign's probably the wrong word, but a kind of sort of grassroots thing a few years ago for people who were parents of children with Down syndrome. And my little girl has Down syndrome, and we're all getting this kind of matching tattoo. And I remember going in and sitting with the tattoo artist. It was a 5 minute little tattoo that I was getting done, as well as some other stuff. And she asked what it was, and I explained, and then she said, "Oh, my brother has Down syndrome." And then we got into this whole conversation about
Mm.
Down syndrome and kind of how that was for her and her brother and how he's doing. And now every time I go back to see her, oh, how's your brother doing? Yeah, how's your daughter? Yeah. So it's much more than just the sort of relationship that I have with, I don't know, my hairdresser or someone, which is often a kind of similar occupational space in terms of how people think about
Yeah.
tattooing. I think it's some sort of aesthetic service.
Yeah.
But tattooing for me is, I'm sitting there and I'm sharing all sorts of things about myself and about where I am at that time and what's going on for me. Um, and so having kind of gone through that personally and then kind of turning the sort of professional gaze towards it, if you like, was then I found it really interesting that there was so little that had been
Yeah.
written about this, despite the fact that everyone that I spoke to was saying, well, yeah, this is obviously the case that this is happening, that these tattoos have incredible meaning for people, and yet broadly in the literature, it's just not recognized in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's different. I'm just thinking about the hairdresser example because my sister's a hairdresser and she says that people do like talk to you about all sorts all sorts of
Yeah,
stuff. But I wonder if there's something about you being trapped in a space for like 8 hours. That's that's a long time, isn't it? You're not having an 8 hour
yeah,
haircut probably. Um, for a start.
yeah,
Yeah, there's I don't know. You're going through something with something like, it's pain. There's pain, isn't there? There's often like some adversity and yeah.
yeah. And a lot of the artists that I've spoken to in the research have made very similar points that, part of the difference between tattooing and other sort of similar professions is that, yeah, you're right. Like, 8 hours sat next to someone, talking about whatever it is that kind of brought them there. Then you've got the fact that, there has to be quite a high level of trust in that person, because they're marking you probably
Mm,
for the rest of your life. If I go to somewhere and get a crap haircut, well, I'll go back. Like, I'll get over it. Yeah. But if I go somewhere and get a really crap tattoo, well, that's a bigger problem for me.
yeah.
So there's already a kind of trust buy-in here of not only that I'm going to let you mark me permanently, but also I'm going to let you touch me. I'm going
Yeah.
to let you be in close proximity to me for an extended period of time, which is not something that, generally speaking, we afford most people.
Mm,
Most interactions are, at either physically or emotionally far more distant, um, than tattooing often needs to be.
mm. Yeah, and I'm going to let you hurt me. I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? Really, because that's
Yeah,
not. It's very
yeah,
it's very
absolutely,
vulnerable,
yeah,
isn't it? Okay.
yeah, and I think, yeah, and maybe part of the fact that people are in pain, then maybe, I don't know, helps people to talk more, because maybe, a few artists have said, that they wonder if it's just part of the distraction. I'm just trying to take my mind off the fact that this really hurts, so I'm just going to tell you things to try and kind of keep this conversation going. um and that may well be the case for some people. Not so much for me. When I've had tattoos that really hurt, I tend not to say anything and just kind of quietly grin and bear it.
Quietly
But
endure it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're the researcher and know these things better than I do, but I've sort of heard people say almost the opposite, that like it gives them an opportunity to kind of lock into something that's like more difficult. Like maybe they want to talk about. Let's say they're coming because of a story that they want to convey. And maybe that helps them to lock into it and they focus on it in some way.
yeah. And I think for just people as well, sometimes when they're first arriving at the tattoo studio, um, there's the potential for things to be quite raw still. So, I don't know, like, to kind of sort of segue from my example, I suppose, you've had a bereavement, a person's had a bereavement.
Mm,
They may be that they're drawn to that, getting that tattoo relatively early in that
mm,
process of kind of grieving. So, because things are still so raw, they're more likely to share it, as opposed to, you know, years later, when maybe they've kind of built up some of those walls again, and they don't feel quite so comfortable sharing it.
mm,
I think that seems to be part of it. I mean, so, again, from some of the artists that I've spoke to, some of the things that people were often presenting with, in terms of the turn up and said, I want X tattoo doing because Y has just happened to me.
yeah.
And for some of the artists, they're put in a really difficult position of, um, almost having to say to the person, like, are you sure? Like,
Yeah.
do you really want this now? Because I'm, almost, I'm not sure that you do. Like, from what you're telling me, it sounds like you're just in a really crap place, and you've kind of ended up here, and I'll do it, but I, I I don't know if you really want this or not.
Mm. Yeah, and that, I suppose that comes down to sort of people having to have, because it's a relatively unregulated industry, isn't it, tattooing, I suppose. People having their own
Yeah.
moral code about what they will and won't do. And I guess,
Oh
I've heard
yeah.
some people say, well, if I won't do it, somebody else somebody else will.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember getting a tattoo. Like this is quite a few years ago now, and it was a tiny little studio, just kind of room for basically one chair. And I was in the middle of getting something done by the sort of one artist that was in there, and this guy walked in off the street and said, "He's like, oh yeah, all right, mate. Can I get a quick tattoo done?" And the artist went, "No, mate. For the same reason you can't get a quick boob job." Uh, and then and, s- it, uh, and this bloke just kind of looked totally gone out at him and was, well, why not then? And the artist said, well, what do you want doing? So I just want my girlfriend's name tattooing on my neck. And the artist was like, no, absolutely not doing that. Like, go. But the reality is that bloke will probably just walk down the
Yeah,
street, a few hundred yards, find another person that may well go, yeah, all right, I'll do it. It's however much money. Yeah, done. Um, and that's sort of interesting because I do wonder about, with a lot of the artists that I've spoken to, and the the sort of spaces that they're trying to craft within the studios, and that it is an inclusive space, it's a welcoming space, it's a space where people feel able to share, what's going on for them, what's brought them there, and they're getting very sort of compassionate, ethical responses. Um, but as you say, it's quite an unregulated industry, and then there may well be lots of other places that are not in that, as compassionate, as
yeah,
ethical. As again, coming back to the first tattoo that I got, I think I said to the artist why I was getting it done and what was happening, or why, kind of why I was there. But I wouldn't say that he engaged me in conversation beyond something like, yeah, that sounds sad. Anyway, brace yourself, this will probably hurt.
yeah,
Um, um, but then, even in those sorts of spaces, um, yeah, and again, this came up for some of the artists that were saying they'd spent time in some of these sort of studios that maybe weren't quite as, that did feel a bit less um, sort of compassionate, a bit less open and welcoming. That said it's generally full of people that would probably really benefit from having the opportunity to speak to someone, but it's
mm,
just that for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable doing that, so they're just kind of keeping the barriers up, getting another tattoo and kind of almost drip feeding a little bit of information out to
yeah,
people over time, which again is really interesting.
yeah, yeah. Because I think so. We called our organisation heavy metal therapy, and that was a problem really because it's not actually therapy in terms of like sitting down talking to somebody, but it's this idea that there are some things that are, I suppose, therapeutic. Um,
Yeah.
like maybe we talk about retail therapy and things like that, don't we? But
Mm.
it comes up this idea that tattoos as therapy comes up as like a thing. Tattoos are my therapy and all that kind of stuff. So, like in terms of the research and stuff, like what's the good in it? Like, what are the benefits? Like, why are people saying that they're coming for for these things, like mental health wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, and this is something that I'm still sort of trying to really kind of pin down in the research, but there does seem to be something um around the opportunity to explore stories that otherwise are unsayable in some way. Whether it's loss, it's I don't know, pain, it's trauma, whatever, but something that, is difficult to give words to. I can't, express this in the way that perhaps I express other things in my life. And so an easier way to express that, as is often the case with lots of, what would be considered kind of psychotherapeutic interventions, is we kind of go to something more metaphorical,
Yeah,
something more kind of allegorical to get to that place, and I think tattoos hold a function there. There's something about that kind of metaphorical way into exploring things, um, and I think that because of that, and because of the when it seems to be done really well, the very human response that people are getting, that they're not going to the tattoo artist because they want therapy in the context of, I want someone to do an intervention. It's almost a kind of like a peer support thing.
Yeah.
Often, I've been through this horrendous time, yes, I, as another human being, have also experienced pain and shame and all these things, and I can relate to you. And so there's that opportunity for connection, which again might be difficult for people. And I don't really have anything to support this, but I think there's something about ritual in
Yeah.
tattooing that I'm really interested in. Um, that uh, I was reading a book recently called The Disappearance of Ritual by I can't remember the author now off the top of my head, but
Oh, we can have a
um,
recommended reading list, couldn't we, for this?
yeah. I'll find
Yeah.
the name, but it's uh the point in this book is that in kind of modern Western society we have had a disappearance of ritual. So the
Yeah.
idea that we age but we never get older because people don't have those same kind of ritual points. And I think that there is something very much about the ritual within tattooing of it's a transitional point. It's, I'm moving from, I don't know, like if it's a bereavement, I'm moving from almost kind of this space of immediately being bereaved to a new space.
Yeah.
I've changed something about me physically that is new, it's different, and now I'm in a different place. Or, you know, I um, you know, I feel like I've changed or grown or developed in some way, and this is a marker of that.
Yeah.
And that feels really important, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes wonder if some concerts can be a bit like that, like live, like gatherings of people for like
Yeah,
music and stuff. There's often a ritual element to that, isn't there, as well?
yeah, absolutely. I think any of these things that bring people together to share an experience can serve that sort of function. And I mean, certainly, like um, I was reviewing a dissertation a couple of years ago about tattooing, and that was written by someone in New Zealand. And as part of that, they sort of separated out kind of Maori traditional
Yeah.
tattoos
Yeah.
from kind of Western ideas of tattooing. And almost because of this reason that if you were to kind of look at and interview kind of Maori people who've had the Maori tattoos, the idea that they would be anything other than kind of this ritual symbolic
Yeah.
process would be kind of ludicrous. Like it's almost like, yeah, well, of course that is. Like
Yes.
we're getting like each tattoo is a marker of something.
Yeah.
Um, and so like certainly historically, I think it's fundamentally about kind of ritual. And I don't know, maybe that's still there, but we just don't recognize it as much.
Yes. Yeah. Or it's slightly different, but nonetheless a
Mm.
ritualized element to it. What do you think about kind of identity, as in like wanting to look a particular way? 'Cause I personally feel like when I started having tattoos, I wanted to have particular tattoos that meant particular things, and I feel like at some point I've transitioned from being somebody who has tattoos to being a tattooed person, if that makes sense. And like probably think a bit less actually now about what I'm getting and more so like a bit more about the kind of overall identity as a tattooed person. But I talked to a lot of people about about it being some form, like an identity marker of some sort. Do you know what I mean? To have tattoos or maybe to have particular tattoos.
Yeah, that's interesting. That and certainly kind of like historically, like well, tattoos were often associated with like particular professions, but like the kind of
Tailors.
seafaring
Yeah.
professions. Or yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like there is a kind of sense of identity there, and I suppose yeah, to an extent, I think there is very much like I say, both an identity thing in terms of changes to one sense of oneself through tattoos being explored. But I think, yeah, the things that yeah, the way that we present, or that anyone presents themselves with tattoos. So one of the things that jumped to mind then was, and it kind of I think you sort of kind of mentioned it briefly earlier, but when I was working clinically, I would always be where I was, I'd have my tattoos out, most of my arms are tattooed, and I generally found that incredibly helpful for people.
Mm.
People were much more likely to come and talk to me and want to engage, not necessarily about tattoos, but I think there's something humanizing about that, and I think I felt it was important as, I don't know, to be like, sort of tattooed
Mm.
professional, in some way, and I don't know, maybe that says something about me and how I want to present myself as well. But yeah, I think that that's a really interesting point about kind of, yeah, the a person with tattoos to being a tattooed person. Um, yeah. I,
I mean, maybe
um,
I've made that up in my mind, but I do think there's something about, yeah, some people find it more relatable, don't they, to talk to somebody with tattoos, and with
yeah.
like a lot of young people, and some of them actually seem to like the fact that you have. And one of them said to me the other day, "Oh, well, my therapist is alt as well." I thought, okay, that's something. But they've inferred something about me because of the way that I look. Do you know what I mean? Or because of like having put in it probably as a tattoo is a big part of that. I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's but even it was interesting when I was doing the research with the artists, that a lot of them had kind of interesting markers of, so a lot of them that I spoke to said, I don't tattoo faces.
Mm.
And they had like this kind of, even like for them, that was a step. But even like that was
Meaning they
felt too
wouldn't tattoo
graphic.
somebody on their face, or they wouldn't
Yes.
tattoo
Oh,
like
yes.
on
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. They wouldn't tattoo someone on their face. Not that they wouldn't do like
somebody else's
portraits.
face on them rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No. People said that they wouldn't. They don't tattoo people on their face, and
yeah,
that was felt to be like, for some of the artists, that's
yeah,
like, there's too much, and there's something almost that was an indicator of, I don't know, something like that the person was struggling with something that had
yeah,
brought them there to say that they want that, and they felt like that it was irresponsible to almost to kind of to
yeah,
respond to that with a tattoo.
yeah,
Um, uh, and I think there is still that interesting kind of, I don't know what the threshold is, but it feels like there maybe is one at which, like you say, someone does tip that balance from being someone with tattoos to a tattoo. But I don't know if it's the point at which, I don't know, the neck is tattooed or something. I don't.
yeah, no,
But
yeah. I
there's a,
think yeah, that's
but
interesting. Because I do think facial tattoos. I suppose you probably get to a point where having such kind of marked visible tattoos becomes kind of something that could even be a bit limiting, perhaps even now, isn't it? I think because
mm,
I think let's say you've got facial tattoos, that's probably still now something that would maybe put an employer off, or like
yeah, yeah.
have people comment or look at you in a particular way. Or, I could imagine that there does seem to still be a line, doesn't there, in terms of
Mm, yeah, yeah,
sort
certainly.
of things socially. Hmm.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's the idea that tattoos might be therapeutic, they might be helpful in some ways, the process of and also having them. But I guess in your research, do you come across kind of the bad and the ugly as well? Things that are not so good about having tattoos, being tattooed.
Yeah, I mean, we have had like, it's come up a little bit in the research around, people get tattoos, and for whatever has kind of brought them there, and then afterwards they regret them, and that that then becomes something that is a kind of permanent reflection of a time that wasn't great, and how that's continuing to kind of play out. Um, and certainly from the last big bit of work that we did, that say mainly focused on the artists themselves, a lot of the negative seemed to be for them in terms of the amount of stuff that they had, like, emotionally had to hold afterwards. That there was people coming in disclosing incredible amounts of trauma, whether that be you know they rock up at the studio and say, I want a tattoo because of X, or they are in the process of getting the tattoo, and that's 6 hours worth of time. And for that duration of that 6 hours, I'm just going to tell you about, these awful things that have happened to me, which, there's no judgments for wanting to share that. But for the tattoo artists themselves, they've got nowhere to take that. They're just sitting there listening to this. The tattoo finishes, the next person walks in, and they have to kind of switch it back on again and be like, oh yeah, hi, welcome, everything's fine. Well, actually, there's not many other professions that would be able to endure that. I think to be have to, like, even whatever the profession is, like hairdressing as an example, to come back to that. I think because of the limited time that you're ever going to be with one person, at least there's some space. So even if that client tells you something really difficult, you're not with them for 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever, and kind of having to hold that in the same way. And so for the artist, they're often left with a tremendous amount of emotional kind of weight afterwards. And it's not like there's any kind of supervision. Most artists are often employed in quite difficult, certain difficult is maybe the wrong word, but unstable, they're kind of, they're renting a space from, in a studio. So it's not like they've got anyone to necessarily go to and say, that was really difficult. I need some support with this. And so often the end points for people were kind of burning out, or you kind of getting to the point where just had to disengage. Someone's telling them something awful, and almost the only response they can bear to offer is like, yes, that sounds terrible, and kind of just shut down and withdraw emotionally in order to protect themselves, which then almost brings a secondary burden of kind of feeling guilt because they've not really responded to the person how they feel they should. And so they end up kind of having to hold a lot, and there's no of them to take that. There's no support for that other than them going to access mental health services themselves for some support. So
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe the person who's getting tattooed also then doesn't get the same sort of experience that they might. Yeah, I don't know. They might be expected. Not
yeah,
that you necessarily expect the tattoo artist to be a therapist, but if they sort of come in and disclosing loads of stuff, I guess there might be, yeah, some of their own sense of what do I do with this now? Now I've said
yeah, exactly,
this
yeah,
to this
yeah,
person. Yeah. There's a funny line, isn't there, between sort of like recovery and overcoming and like reenactments and self-harm, and like how do you like know where that is, and maybe it's more blurry than we kind of think it is.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and yeah, that's a really good point. How helpful is it if you and again, a really tricky place for the tattoo artist to have to negotiate if they've got someone that's, you know, this is the 10th tattoo that they've come in for, and it's all, and every time it's talking about this awful trauma that they've gone through. As you say, is that just kind of perpetuating the distress rather than kind of offering a way out or any sort of amelioration of that? It's just kind of keeps on going. I think I remember doing uh, some research against about to do with poetry a few years ago, but someone making this point about how they said when they first had become sort of known for poetry or for what they were writing, it was related to a bereavement that they'd experienced, and what they found was that or yeah, what they found was that when they were going to places to write and to share their work, that they'd get positive responses for their stuff in general, but if they were writing the grief stuff, the really deep stuff, then people would, they get the big
Mm.
applause. And so they kind of kept going back to that, and they were making this point that in hindsight that just kind of perpetuated the grief for years because they were known as the kind of they were the grief person, and people wanted the grief stuff from them.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you know, I think that a lot about songs related to mental health and people when they, have to keep performing stuff that's like really personal, and then that's their thing.
yeah,
So I don't know if you like this kind of stuff, but there's on the first Korn album there's a song about basically about childhood sexual abuse called Daddy that's like, and it's really really famous, and Korn will never play it live, but it's like the most requested of all, and it really like it's just the guy's getting like really really upset in it, and everyone like requests it and almost like wants them to play it. And I think, God, imagine sticking all that like out there and then being like, right, you've got to like almost like relive it over and over.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And like I said, to have to, I guess if you're used to doing it one, maybe a couple it's on an album and it's
And
out
yeah,
there.
yeah, and that's it, yeah.
But yeah, like I say having to perform that would be horrendous. I
Yeah.
assume.
But then if
Yeah.
that's how you kind of, yeah, that's your livelihood or whatever, then it's tough, isn't it, to kind of,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
I mean that was for the artist. It's sort of similar thing for tattoo. That not only is like the kind of need to go through the motions with people, kind of to do the emotional support to kind of to help them, but equally um, there's this tension there with this is my job, so I need to like, if we have a lovely time talking, but you leave with a crap tattoo, then I'm not going to get more people coming here for tattoos, and then I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah,
So
yes.
I have to balance the fact that I need to offer you emotional support whilst also doing this very intricate
Hmm.
thing that I need to do, which is, it's that kind of sort of patting your head, rub your tummy thing at the same time. Like,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's really difficult.
yeah, yeah. And so I suppose, you'll always get people who will, I suppose, choose kind of quite self-destructive things to sort of like, get tattooed on them, or like if it's location or if it's the
Yeah, yeah,
time or
absolutely, yeah,
whatever.
potentially,
So
yeah.
yeah, okay. So you've talked loads about your research in terms of the obviously speaking to artists and interviewing artists and things like that. I suppose what you're saying really is that there's an impact, positive and potentially challenging, for artists as well as the people that are getting tattoos around mental health.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's lots of avenues and opportunities for research for, you in lots of different ways in relation to tattoos, but I think both for people with tattoos and the people doing the tattooing, I think there's a need for research for both groups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And as you say, it's about telling stories, isn't it? So like, tattoos tell stories, and the artists are the people that tell those stories for us, actually, in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when I've had tattoos, like, I've had lots of tattoos by one person, and I guess initially when I first started getting tattoos, what I wanted was to have a design that I chose, and it had to look exactly like I wanted it to. And then now I will go to my person and be like, well, something a little bit like this, and then you sort of like I trust him to tell the story that I want to be that I want to
Yeah.
be. So that it does feel like it's a dual, it's a more kind of collaborative relationship than it is just like I want this on me. So
And that's really, yeah, that sounds really good. I mean, I guess it's like um in some ways many of the stories that we have about ourselves and our world, they're very often only constructed by us. We're constructing them in relationships with other people. And I think if you can get to a place with the tattoo artist where you're able to have that sort of level of connection, I think yeah, that that sounds
it's
wonderful.
trust, isn't it? But
But
also I think
yeah.
it's he's far more talented and imaginative than I am. So
Yeah,
I'm also
yeah,
wanting
yeah,
to. So that
yeah,
it's a service, isn't it, as an artist in a way? That they're doing something, not just colouring in, are they? It's something else.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's slightly different, but I was doing some work a while ago with uh, an artist who does a lot of portraiture, and he was talking about the sort of experiences of painting someone's portrait and the things that people will share with you during that process. A very kind of similar thing where he's painting and they're kind of giving him information about their life, and he's sort of weaving that into this image that he's creating. Um, but along that journey, inevitably there's all sorts of disclosures that come out that that then ends up with this, kind of beautiful
Mm.
canvas at the end, which isn't just a reflection of the person. It's not just a like a photo of the person sat there. There's kind of more life to it because it embodies all of those things. And yeah, if like with tattoos, finding an artist that can embody those things for you, um, I think could be
Mm.
incredibly helpful for people.
It's like
When,
narrative. It's like narrative therapy, isn't it? In a way, you're sort of like
mm,
the way that they kind of map out, like the tree of life and all that kind of stuff. Like it's kind of there,
yeah,
isn't it? But in tattoo
yeah,
form.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh, right. I could probably talk to you for ages, but I'm aware that we probably need to kind of wrap things up. I guess I we always talk to people about their kind of like their life with music and how I suppose music relates to the topics that we've been talking about. Now, lots of people have like metal band inspired tattoos or lyrics or like anything like that. But do you think that's the case for you? Has music been a big part of your kind of tattoo journey, or is it been quite separate? I don't really have musical tattoos particularly, but
Um, the I no, yeah, I have a couple of tattoos that relate to music, I suppose. Like I've got yeah, mainly I've got a couple of lyrics
yeah,
that which is kind of often what people tend to get. But uh, yeah, I think music throughout my life has played an important part in all sorts of things, and I think as yeah, certainly with the lyrics has impacted me deciding to get those. Uh, I haven't got any kind of uh, like cover art or anything like that
no, no.
tattooed yet. Yeah,
Yes, oh, yes, that sounds like
yet, yeah, yeah, yeah. Never say never.
okay. And we always ask people if they want to pick a song or something, or it could be an album or an artist or whatever, that kind of represents what we've been talking about. Or if you can't be bothered to do that, just think about something that you like. It doesn't have to be metal, but I suppose most of the people that listen to this will probably be metal-ish people.
Metalish, yeah. I was trying to think about this before and think about. I'm not. I'm not sure that they're metal, but they feel. Um, when I was thinking about kind of heavier stuff
Yeah.
that I'm into, um, and it's Incubus.
Oh, that's
Um,
fine. I love Incubus.
yeah,
Oh, I did in the 90s. Yeah, I thought they were
yeah,
great.
yeah. I know. Like it's a bit. Yeah, sort of aging myself a little bit here, but yeah.
Oh, and can you remember they had that music video and it was all it did have his tattoos on it. Like he had red tattoos, didn't he? Brandon Boyd. I
Yeah,
remember that he had, and there was like a video and it would draw. It was like drawing all of his tattoos.
yeah, 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 yeah. So oh, yeah, loads of different songs that I could pick, but I mean that yeah, off the top of my head, something like a certain shade of green, I think
Yeah,
is a brilliant song. Um, uh, uh, I've actually one of the later albums, If Not Now When. I
yeah,
ended up after that I've got If Not Now When tattooed on me.
yeah,
So they were they've yeah I and when Light Grenades came out, that was when I was still at university. I just remember just that being just on constantly in our student house, and
yeah.
yeah, uh,
Yeah, it
yeah,
connects us
great.
to memories often, doesn't it? In the same way that tattoos kind of do. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I can remember going to see them live, like oh, I can't remember how long, but yeah, early 2000s, and yeah, it just been brilliant. So uh, yeah, that would be
excellent.
the band that I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Well, yeah. I don't know if we've ever had Incubus on
Oh,
the
there
pod
you go.
before. So there you go. It's making its debut. Really good show.
Yeah.
I loved a bit of Incubus when I was younger. I'll go back now and I'll probably listen to it again.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking all stuff about tattoos. What I'll do is yeah, we can maybe link your little reading list if you want and your song and everything else.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to plug in terms of like where people could find out a bit more about your research or anything like that?
No, I mean, so if you just Google Mark Pearson, University of Nottingham,
Yeah,
you'll find me and contact details for me. So, if anything we've said has kind of sparked interest and you want to get in touch, then by all means do. My email address is just it's on the university's website. It's freely available. So,
yeah.
go for it. And no, yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely to talk about tattoos.
No, you're welcome. I'm sure we'll do a lot more of it as we
Yeah.
hopefully work together a bit.